On today's Locked On Thunder podcast, the Oklahoma City Thunder knock off the Memphis Grizzlies, winning 11 in a row. Ajay Mitchell was massive in this game. SGA was just silly, scoring the basketball and much more.
You are Locked On Thunder, your daily Oklahoma City Thunder podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Let's get it going on the Locked On Thunder podcast on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I am your host, media member, and beat writer for Thunder on SI, Rylan Stiles. Follow me on Twitter at Rylan_Stiles. Follow the show on Twitter at LOThunderPod. Email the show, LOThunderPod@gmail.com. On today's show, we're diving into the Oklahoma City Thunder knocking off the Memphis Grizzlies, winning 11 in a row in a game in which it was a shaky start for the Thunder on the second night of a back-to-back, but ultimately they grew a big lead and really never looked back. But we're going to talk about all of that on today's show. Thank you so much for making us your first listen. Go check out Locked On NBA for your second listen. And when you look at this game, for one, no matter who played and who didn't play, and we're going to get into that in a second, this was still an impressive win for the Thunder because you're on the second night of a back-to-back, a travel back-to-back, and you were able to get a win, and not just any win, a blowout win. But the hits just kept coming for the Memphis Grizzlies. Their initial injury report didn't have Ja Morant, didn't have Marcus Smart. They weren't going to have, of course, Vince Williams and Gigi Jackson, who've been out all year long. They were just missing a ton of guys from the word go. And then you saw them have to add Zach Edey to the injury report with about, an hour to go before the game. Zach Edey was a late scratch due to a concussion. And this is another game in which the Thunder get, if you want to call it, the benefit of not playing the top tier guys. I mean, look at the last two games, for example. Didn't have to play LaMelo, didn't have to play Brandon Miller. Didn't have to play Ja Morant, Zach Edey, Gigi Jackson, Vince Williams, Marcus Smart, Santi Aldama of Memphis. It's a very depleted Grizzlies team. That was a very depleted Hornets team. Do I think that the emergence of a LaMelo and a Brandon Miller and a Ja and an Edey causes the Thunder to absolutely lose? I mean, I don't think it's absolute. I think that this game would have been a much better game, and it's why everybody in Oklahoma City, everybody in Memphis had this game scheduled as a way to have a kind of measuring stick of the two best teams in the West. And then we end up getting this. And I can see it being viewed as a benefit because at the end of the day, wins are the only thing that matters, right? Going to improve to 11 straight wins, 10-0, of course, in your last 10 games, and 26-5, the best start in franchise history. That's what matters at the end of the day. However, along the way, you really want to test yourself and test your mettle. And that's why I think that you're seeing why the NBA Cup was so important. Because there was a lot of noise about should the Thunder try to win the Cup? Should they try to play in the NBA Cup? How far should they take this? There was also a lot of noise of look at Boston. They didn't make the bracket play, so then they got two easy opponents, and they have a better cushion, better life than these teams who actually survived the pool play stage. But you look at that sequence of playing Dallas, Houston, and Milwaukee. If you take away those three games from the docket, the Thunder have not been tested this month. And they went 2-1 in those tests. That's a great showing. I'm not saying that the Thunder have coasted by or are a product of an easy schedule. I'm just saying that you really miss seeing this team get to play high-level, healthy teams and measure up, because I still think that they're going to win. I mean, look at their record against teams above 500. I think that they're going to win a ton of games, and I think that they would have beaten Memphis tonight if Memphis was fully healthy. I just cannot wait to get to these points where it's as healthy as you can be versus as healthy as you can be, because clearly the Thunder are not going to have Chet Holmgren for the vast majority of this regular season. They did not have Alex Caruso tonight. Everybody deals with injuries, but Ja Morant got hurt Friday. If he doesn't play Friday, he'd be playing in this game. Zach Edey sustained a concussion an hour before the game somehow after not being reported on the injury report the entire day. So it's just things like that that you take the luster out of games like this, but still impressive nonetheless, no matter who you play, to grow a 31-point lead, only see 3 lead changes and 3 ties, and really, this was a game that went second quarter to fourth quarter with the Thunder in the lead. Memphis came out punching, and you kind of felt like, well, no matter who's in or out for Memphis, if they're going to rotate like this defensively, where the Thunder just could not get a clean look, and the Thunder are going to look this sloppy and sluggish on the second night of a back-to-back, we could be in for a ball game. And so it's an 11-2 start for Memphis. Mark calls a timeout. The Thunder go on a run, and it's 11-11. And from that point on, it was all Thunder. It was all Thunder from that point on, as the Thunder win in this one in impressive fashion, 130-106. Memphis actually won the battle of the boards, 51-45, but the Thunder got the turnover battle. They were a plus 11 in the turnover battle, which will do it every single time. Memphis shot 38%, 27%, and 85%. The Thunder shot 50% from the floor, 31% from deep, and then 100% from the charity stripe. However, I cannot wait to go back. So every day after a game, I rewatch the night before to make sure that we wouldn't miss anything. I'm interested to see the quality of 3-point shots that the Thunder had in the second half, because in the first half they shot 44% from 3-point land. The Thunder did, and then in the second half it dramatically dropped to 15%, where that's where you see the overall percentage of this game get skewed. And I can just think off the top of my head of like the 3 Shai threes. At least 2 of them were just chuck it up in transition, don't really care. And so whenever you shoot those kind of shots and you miss, that of course impacts your percentages, but isn't necessarily an indictment of where this team is at shooting, right? Because like if you just look at the box score it's another game where they shot 31% from the 3-point line, you might consider this as a part of their shooting slump. But when the game was in the balance and the game was actually competitive, they shot 44% from 3. Like they were really good shooting the ball. It's just that when they got this lead, then you start, I don't know if you want to call it getting reckless, but then you just start taking shots that you normally would not take should it be a more competitive game. I know that Ajay's 1 miss from 3 in the second half went halfway home and bounced out. And you kind of saw it in living color here of what the difference is when Isaiah Joe is on versus whenever Isaiah Joe is off. Isaiah Joe 1 for 4 in the second half. And in the first half, Isaiah Joe hit his first opportunity and went 2 for 4. And in those 12 minutes where like you hit 12 and 12 really from Isaiah Joe, in those 12 minutes, it ties together the offense so much whenever he can shoot the ball at a higher clip. But again, the second half threes, I think, tanked their overall percentages, but I still believe that this was a good 3-point shooting night from the Thunder. I think that if you did not know what the stats said at the end of this game and you just were kind of going off the eye test, you would have thought that the Thunder broke out of their shooting slump. Points in the paint, the Thunder dominate as usual, 56-36. Second chance points, Memphis just obliterated the Thunder in second chance points, 30-11. And then the Thunder returned the favor in fast break points, 25-12. I thought that the Thunder handled Memphis's one and only punch in a great way. They settled in. I mean, they went 3 minutes without scoring. It was a 9-0 Memphis run to start. Then it was 11-2 run. And OKC was able to have 2 different stints of 20-7 runs in the first half, which let them blow the doors off of a very depleted Memphis Grizzlies team. I still think that Memphis is a team who has a formula to give OKC trouble. They just did not have that formula tonight because you don't have Morant and you don't have Edey. I think that Edey changes some things of what they can do defensively because you look at how effective Jaren Jackson Jr. was as a defender. You take him even further away from the rim and let him roam off more with Edey down there. You could have seen them throw some different coverages at Oklahoma City. But coming up, let's talk SGA, let's talk Isaiah Hartenstein, let's talk AJ Mitchell and the rest of these standouts from this game. But first, I want to say right now, but our friends over at Rocket RX. Go check out Rocket RX today because today's show is brought to you by them. If you're ready to boost your confidence and take control in the bedroom, Rocket RX has the solution. Imagine feeling more prepared and performing at your best. Rocket RX makes it simple and stress-free. Rocket RX offers FDA-approved treatments for erectile dysfunction at a lower cost than brand alternatives. No more uncomfortable doctor visits or pharmacy trips. Everything is delivered straight to your door in discreet, plain packaging with Rocket RX. You'll get trusted care from a real U.S. Clinical team today, complete with a quick 100% online consultation, and you could get your free prescription today. Visit rocketrx.com to get started now. It only takes 2 minutes. Don't we all? Right now, our listeners can get 40% off your first order when you use Locked On NBA. That's rocketrx.com, code Locked On NBA for 40% off your first order. Terms and conditions apply. Rocket RX, better sex made simple. We're back on the Locked On Thunder podcast, on the Locked On Podcast Network, your teams every day. We're here talking about the Oklahoma City Thunder beating the Memphis Grizzlies in this game. It's hard not to start with SGA because you could start every pod of every game that he plays in with SGA. But man, 35 points, 6 rebounds, 7 assists, a steal, 4 blocks, only 1 turnover. He did go 1 for 5 from 3. Like I mentioned, he took some ill-advised threes. That's a product of the game flow. For example, Isaiah Hartenstein went 0 for 2 from 3, and those happened pretty early in the game. I would have liked to see Isaiah Hartenstein go 0 for 5 from 3 tonight, because like there were spots where he was still in the game up 20, and Memphis was still playing him the same way, where they're sagging off of him, and he has an opportunity to shoot. I would have liked to see him throw it up, and so it's kind of the same thing with Shai. Whereas if you're grading that shot independent of score and independent of game context, it would be a bad shot. But whenever you factor it all in, and it's an all-encompassing shot, I like seeing Shai try things out on the floor and trying to develop that three-point shot. That being said, folks, 1 for 5 from 3. He went 14 for 19 overall and shot 73% from the floor. He was absolutely unstoppable, and he was a plus 27. Where I think that the Thunder can counteract some of those, formulaic advantages for Memphis, right? And what do I mean by that? Well, if you look at the history of how the Thunder have been disrupted defensively, it's whenever you get aggressive perimeter defenders defending J-Dub and Shai, and you have a rim protector. Where the Thunder can overcome that a bit is because of Shai. And I don't just mean that as in he's one of the best scorers in the league. It's the style of which he scores. If you're Memphis and you're having to game plan for a 7-game playoff series, I really think that at some point, Jaren Jackson Jr. will be the defender on Shai, as he was at times tonight. And you're going to have to see that it's a pick your poison matchup. And we're not even talking about when this team has Chet. So when this team has Chet, Edey cannot defend Chet. And we're going to run into a problem here if you're Memphis with Jaren Jackson Jr. because he's your best guy on 3 different options. He's your best guy to defend Chet. He's your best guy to defend Shai. He's your best guy to defend Jalen Williams. I'm not saying that he's the best defender. I think that he is, but you can make an argument for Desmond Bane. I'm not trying to dismiss Desmond Bane. The reason why I think that Shai can counter how Memphis on paper can defend the Thunder is because of his size. Like, Jalen Wells is not a terrible defender. Desmond Bane is not a terrible defender. Scottie Pippen Jr. is a scrappy defender. But with Shai's elevation in the post, they stood no chance. I mean, there was nothing they could do. They could play textbook defense, and guess what? Shai's going to turn around on the baseline, throw up a floater behind the backboard, and nail it. By the way, that shot has become so normalized in Oklahoma City. You should be freaking out every single time he makes that shot. It is absurd. It is absurd that he can do that he can rise up behind the backboard and launch it up and nail it as a go-to routine move. But that being said, if you put Jaren Jackson Jr. on Shai, well, guess what? Who's your physical defender to really get into J-Dub and bother him with his frame? You're lacking in that department now because he's now playing Shai. We haven't even discussed if Chet's back. If Chet's back, who in the world is defending Chet if you must use Jaren Jackson Jr. on Shai? And if you don't put Jaren Jackson Jr. on Shai, well, look at the results tonight. I mean, he was punishing Pippen and Wells in the post. And I know that they didn't have John Morant, but no offense to a great player in this league, John Morant, he's not going to defend Shai at a high clip. And you're probably not going to want him defending Shai. He'll probably get the Lou Dort, Cason Wallace assignment. So Shai and his ability to work the post now, which he's talked about a lot this week, of him, kind of expanding that part of his game, that's been killer to kind of force the hand of the opposition to adjust, because now it helps out his teammates in the matchups that they're going to receive in the process. Let's talk Isaiah Hartenstein, who went 12 points, 9 boards, 6 assists, 3 blocks in this game. You cannot applaud Isaiah Hartenstein more for the efforts that he had tonight defensively. I think that, like, when you look at Jaren Jackson Jr.'s box score and you see he has 13 points on 17% shooting from the floor, 0 for 6 from 3, and of those 13 points, 7 of them came at the free throw line, 5 rebounds, 4 assists, a steal, and a block. When you look at that stat line, you would say, well, of course he struggled, right? Like, there was no one else with him. There was no Ja. He didn't have Edey to distract the big, which is true. I mean, you would imagine, of course, that if Edey played, Hartenstein would be on Edey, Jada would be on Jaren. But I think that Hartenstein deserves a ton of credit because they trusted Hartenstein to go defend Jaren Jackson Jr. in space on the perimeter, and he held up, man. Go to the NBA.com box score where they just let you click on individual stats and just show you the video from it. Watch all 3 of Jaren Jackson Jr.'s made shots. They look the exact same. It is 100% smothered by Isaiah Hartenstein. It's textbook, great defense. And Jackson Jr. just made the shot. And like, sometimes with a guy like that who's an all-star, he's going to make the shot and you've got to tip your cap to him. But what an impressive showing from Hartenstein on this game defensively. Now, that being said, offensively, you started to see this week it become dramatized of teams playing off of Hartenstein, where this high post playmaking, they're trying to negate that by sagging off, gapping him, playing the passing lanes, because they understand he's not going to shoot the ball. And in their minds, he can't shoot the ball. And maybe he can't. Maybe he can. Who knows? This has been a big talking point for Hartenstein since training camp, of like him wanting to show he can shoot. We've seen him practice his three-point shot at Thunder practices and training camp and shoot-arounds. And even tonight, Mark talked about how he has the green light for Hartenstein to shoot the ball. But because he's not shooting it, teams are now playing off of him more dramatically. And it was really dramatic against Charlotte. It was dramatic tonight, of course, against Memphis to a bigger degree, because they had the defender who you don't want being able to roam, whereas Charlotte really has no intimidating defender. But one adjustment that Hartenstein's already made, it's not the 2 threes. Go look at his catch points against Washington, against Charlotte, and he's receiving the ball a step or 2 behind the 3-point line. That completely plays into the hands of the defense, who's already sagging off of you. That puts you in position to do nothing. You're too far out to even think about scoring, and you're also too far out to create an advantage for your teammates, because, again, they're sagging off of you, they're helping, they're gapping, they're geared up to stop you as a playmaker. And that was a trend especially bad against Charlotte. Tonight, it was fixed. I mean, it was he caught everything at the 3-point line or inside of it, and it really helped him navigate through a clunky situation where this is another season in which you have a player who's ignored on the perimeter. He's able to overcome it some more because he can set the screens, he can have the DHOs, he can, of course, thread the needle as a passer, and he can turn around and throw up a floater. He can roll to the rim. He can do multiple things, but when he's on the perimeter, where he does stay sometimes, you again can ignore him if you're the opposing defenses. How do you stop them from ignoring him? Again, the catch point is huge. But number 2, I would have liked to see him take more threes tonight, as we already alluded to, because it was inconsequential to this game. You were not going to win or lose this game because of 5 possessions in the second half up 30, where Hartenstein took a 3 whenever you could have continued to work for a better shot. And in turn, you could have put that on film to where maybe teams adjust to it of like, hey, he's now a willing shooter we at least want to contest. Or you could have had them go in and kind of grown some confidence there in an actual live game. Because to Mark's point, um, Mark talked about how whenever he's practicing his 3-point shot, he can really stroke it. And whenever the media gets allowed in to view portions of shoot around in practice, he does shoot the ball really well. There's a difference, though, in shooting the ball well in those circumstances versus in an actual game. And until you start to pull the trigger in the game, it's hard to develop that part of your game. So I would have liked to see him shoot the ball more from 3, but that was one adjustment I noticed from Hartenstein. And I also wanted to give him a ton of credit for what he did defensively against Jaren Jackson Jr. But coming up, let's talk AJ Mitchell and his big night. Let's talk J-Dub and a bounce back from him and more. We're back on the Locked On Thunder podcast, on the Locked On Podcast Network, your teams every day. Thank you so much for making us your first listen every single morning, every single day. We're here for you, talking Thunder basketball. When you look at this game, AJ Mitchell really stands out. 6 for 11 from the floor, 54%. 3 for 5 from 3, including one that just went to the bottom of the net and then bounced out, which could have added to an even bigger night from him. 2 for 2 at the free throw line. A rebound, 3 assists, 1 steal, 10 first half points, 17 total points, a plus 20 in this game. I was asking Mark and Shai about what playing alongside AJ opens up for those two guys, and they each had the same answer. Takes pressure. It takes pressure off of SGA, as like if they're going to pressure him in the backcourt, you now have a reliable ball handler that you want to get the ball to kind of avoid that. In the half court, you're able to see him set Shai up for easier opportunities. And one thing about Shai, when we're talking about those baseline turnaround jumpers, that everyone loves the end result. A lot of the times those plays start from something that a lot of you complain about, which is like, why is Shai in the corner? The reason why at times Shai can be found in the corner is because when AJ Mitchell's in the game, you have a guy who can facilitate and bring the ball up the floor, get you into your half court shell, and then get the ball over to Shai as the other guys are clearing out, to where whenever you're laser focused on Shai standing in the corner, you're missing what else is happening with the other 4 guys, where they are, setting up away from Shai, getting him the ball in the corner, to where now it's an isolation in the short corner that you really want, with Shai with his back to the basket on the baseline, one-on-one with a smaller defender and going to work. And so like you now playing him alongside a point guard are allowing that to happen, allowing that to materialize. And with AJ, it's not just about what he does with Shai. Number 2, along with the being a point guard role helping Shai, the defense is there. I mean, this guy can defend his butt off. You should know that already because 1, you're probably watching these games, and 2, you don't get to play for Mark unless you can defend. But man, the intensity and the fact that like he's only gotten 1 steal on this game. But if we changed the steal stat to a first forced turnover stat, where it includes poking the ball loose and Memphis is scrambling and the ball rolls out of bounds, or poking the ball loose and it bobbles around 2 or 3 times and the Thunder pick it up and go on a fast break. Like if we change that to just forced turnovers, or they lose it on the way up, or they're deterred at the rim, forced turnovers, if that was the metric, AJ Mitchell would have a lot more of those, and like getting actual stops defensively. He erased a fast break opportunity himself. He created one himself too. Whenever he got an outlet pass from, I believe it was J-Dub, high pointed it, mossing Jalen Wells, and then getting to the free throw line because of it, going 2 for 2 and giving him the 10th point of the first half. So taking the pressure off of Shai and J-Dub is huge. And then his feel for the game is huge. And this is what Shai talked about post-game whenever I kind of asked him what it's like playing off of him. And I asked Shai about him specifically. And Shai himself talked about what he does for the team, and then also talked about what he does for Shai specifically. And one of the things he said he does for the team is he's just a very high IQ player that can feel the game. And if you can feel the game, you can play at any level. And that, Shai admitted that whenever like when you first look at AJ Mitchell, you wouldn't have expected him to play this much, to be in the rotation every single game, and to be a pivotal part of a team that's on pace for the, of course, historic season, the best start in Thunder history. But he said in training camp, you quickly realized that that was going to be the case. And he told a story about how there was one sequence in training camp where he made 5 plays in a row. Like he was the guy making the plays 5 times in a row. And you think back to training camp where everybody's healthy. I mean, it's Chet, it's Hartenstein, it's Shai, it's J-Dub, it's Caruso, like it's Kaysen, it's Wiggins, it's Joe. You think back to when everybody was healthy in training camp, and that's the guy that made 5 straight plays. That is pretty impressive. And that's a little glimpse inside of how the Thunder have grown to trust AJ Mitchell this quick, this fast. But again, you can go read my exclusive interview with AJ and his college coach about how he's been able to make an impact right away at Thunder on SI. But talking about J-Dub, he shot 45% or 43% from the floor, 14 points, 10 boards, 8 assists, 2 steals, 1 block. He really enjoyed that bump fade in the mid-range. His efficiency is hurt in this game by going over 5 from 3. But really, when you look inside the arc, he went to that bump fade down low over smaller defenders, which I do like, because you can, if you're just looking at this through like, how can I criticize Jalen Williams? You can say, well, he could have gotten to the rim more against smaller guys. Sure, he could have. I don't know that he has the handle necessary to routinely do that. So what did he do instead? Was he used his body to his advantage, where he's doing the things that we've been talking about for the last 2 weeks that you want to see from him more of initiating contact, not just absorbing contact, but initiating contact to free himself up. And he did that really well against the smaller Memphis guards. Kenrich Williams continues to impress, 3 for 4 off the bench from 3, 12 points, 3 assists, 3 boards. He was everywhere. Wiggins had some fun moments, scoring the basketball, but overall, he's a guy that, again, is put in a tough spot defensively. I know that his defense looks really bad, especially comparatively to the rest of this roster, especially comparatively to a team who quite literally is an all-time great defensive unit right now. But you have to keep in mind the context of how he's looking bad. For example, Jay Huff took him to lunch a few times in this game. Yeah, but Jay Huff is also 7'6", right? Like he's 7'1" for the Memphis Grizzlies. Of course, he's going to be able to turn his back to the basket and back down Wiggins and get by him in that way. It wasn't as though Jay Huff beat him off the dribble and dusted him, right? Like he did what 7'1" guys should do against 6'4" guys. And so, like, I just think that sometimes the context of what Wiggins is being asked to do gets lost because you just see, opponent score, you're a bad defender. And that's not always the case with these guys. But still, I know that this game will be diminished by many because, like, you played the Memphis Hustle tonight. But it is an impressive showing of resilience from a team to do this on the second night of a back-to-back. I will say, I cannot wait for Tuesday. And it's crazy because last Monday, I said I cannot wait for Sunday to play Memphis. I cannot wait now for Tuesday to play Minnesota, who might be catching their stride a little bit because of what they did on Christmas Day and the game against San Antonio, which was a fun game on Sunday night. You know that Ant Edwards is going to play in this game. You know that Rudy's going to play in this game. You feel good about that. So, like, this is going to be a team in which you finally have their best against your best, and not even your best, because of course Chet and Caruso is not going to play. I can already hear you guys screaming that now that I said that. But what is your version of your best right now versus their version of their best right now? It's going to be a lot of fun on Tuesday, and it should be the start of a very fun homestand, which tonight should have been, but instead that gets delayed until Tuesday against Minnesota. Then you play the Clippers and New York and Boston to end it out. It'll be a lot of fun. We'll be here to cover every single game. On tomorrow's show, we're going to have New Year's resolutions for the Oklahoma City Thunder. What do you want the Thunder to change in the new year? Let us know down below. And until next time, be good and be good to one another.